Welcome to the deep dive. We often hear about policy debates, sort of abstract discussions in the headlines, rules, regulations, but it's rare we get to really unpack how these things actually land, how they affect people's daily lives, their choices, their budgets, maybe even their sense of dignity. Today, we're doing just that. We're taking a deep dive into a very specific policy, one that's, well, it sparked significant backlash. We're talking about the Trump administration's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that's SNA, and its controversial junk food ban. Now, this deep dive, it's custom tailored for you. We've pulled together quite a range of sources. We've got detailed briefing documents, insights from Loop Speak by Devin McClarty, that series known for its sharp analysis, and also some really compelling direct women's voices accounts, personal stories. Our mission here is simple. Extract the key insights, the important nuggets, help you understand not just what happened, but really why it matters, especially to one key group. So this ban is started rolling out in 2026. It's in 12 states, the ones that got USDA waivers. So important point, it's not nationwide.
Right. And it restricts buying things like soda, candy, other snacks with SNAP benefits. And what's really, I think, compelling here, what this deep dive really shows, is how fast policy shifts from paper to, well, personal feelings, like a personal affront, especially for women. They make up over 60% of adult SNAP recipients, and they're usually the ones making the grocery decisions at home. So we're going to explore the policy specifics, the really deep reasons for this backlash, and that fundamental conflict it lights up.
Yeah.
Government goals versus personal freedom. Okay, so let's start there, laying out the facts. What exactly is this SNAP junk food ban?
Okay. Well, as you said, the policy idea came from the Trump administration before 2025, and the actual rollout began in 2026. And yeah, the scope is key. It's not everywhere, just those 12 states that got specific waivers from the USDA to try this out.
Got it.
And the items targeted are, well, pretty much what you'd expect based on the name. Soda, different kinds of candy, and a general category of other snack items. Okay, so policy seems clear enough on paper, but the impact... That's where it gets complicated, right? It seems women are really feeling this one. Can you help us understand why they're the main voice, the primary demographic pushing back?
Yeah, that's really where the numbers tell a story. Like you mentioned, over 60% of adult SNAP recipients are women. That's a huge majority.
Wow, over 60%?
Yeah. And crucially, they are almost always the primary grocery decision makers. They're the ones managing the household budget, planning meals, actually doing the shopping. So when a rule comes down saying what you can and can't put in your cart for your family, well, it hits them directly, every day.
Right, in their routine.
Exactly. It's not abstract at all. It's a direct intervention in their shopping. So naturally, the reaction is stronger, more immediate, and definitely more vocal.
That makes total sense. They're right there on the front lines, dealing with it week after week. So, okay, what does that look like for an individual woman, a mother, a caregiver? When you boil it down, what are the core reasons for this anger, this pushback we're hearing about?
Well, it's definitely multi-layered. I think the first thing you hear very strongly is this feeling, this sense that the government is basically policing their grocery carts.
Policing their carts.
Yeah. It feels like excessive oversight, like an intrusion into a really personal area. And they see it as eroding their autonomy.
Yeah.
Their basic choice. And then there are the really practical difficulties. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
For lots of families, these banned items, they aren't just like random splurges. They might be for kids' birthdays, school events, maybe just quick, affordable treats.
Or just a cheap snack to get through the day.
Exactly. Or a quick snack when things are hectic. So taking those options away creates real practical headaches for managing the household, especially on a tight budget.
I can definitely see that. It's not just about the food itself. It's about managing life, managing kids, especially when money's tight. Adds another layer of stress.
Precisely. And then there's this other layer, the psychological impact, this perception of judgment, of stigma. We heard from one woman in the Women's Voices accounts about feeling, embarrassed. She couldn't grab a cheap treat for her kid after a doctor's appointment. Felt like a small kindness was being policed.
Oof, yeah.
And another quote, this one from Texas, but echoed by women in Florida too, they just flat-out said the ban feels patronizing.
Patronizing, that's a strong word.
It is. It's about being told what you can't buy, sometimes right there at the checkout, maybe with other people around, that feeling of being singled out.
So it really is about way more than just a can of soda or a candy bar then. It cuts deeper. Feelings of respect, agency.
Absolutely, that's the connection. When you look at the bigger picture, the emotional reaction, It goes way beyond just the food items and
Yeah.
taps into these fundamental issues of dignity, of independence. It's about how they feel they're being perceived, how they're being treated as capable adults managing their families.
Okay, this raises a really interesting, almost fundamental question, doesn't it? I mean, look, from one angle, banning soda and candy with taxpayer money, you can see the argument, right? Supporters say it's about protecting public funds, improving public health. Makes sense on the surface.
Sure, that's the argument.
But what you're describing, this backlash from women, suggests it's being received as something much more intrusive, maybe even insulting. How do those two views coexist? Or can they?
Well, that tension is the conflict, isn't it? That's right at the heart of this. Many women, like we've been discussing, they see the ban as fundamentally patronizing, as government overreach into their personal lives. And they often feel it's not really getting at the root problems. Things like poverty itself for food, deserts those areas where it's hard to even find affordable, healthy food.
Right, the bigger picture issues.
Exactly. They feel it's imposing restrictions without actually making healthy food easier to get or more affordable, which is, a key part of the equation. So you have the supporters framing it as responsible spending, a public health measure.
Mm.
Sensible, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But the critics, especially the women directly impacted, see it very differently. They see it as intrusive micromanagement that doesn't tackle the real underlying issues: poverty, access, affordability.
So the policy kind of misses the mark for them.
That's how they perceive it. So the backlash, it ends up highlighting these really deep concerns about control, about respect, about the trust between the government and citizens, particularly women in this case. It stops being just about soda and candy and becomes profoundly about dignity, independence, and feeling targeted or maybe just unheard when policies affect your daily life so directly.
It's really clear there's a significant emotional, almost philosophical weight to this. But let's talk tangible effects too. Beyond that frustration, that feeling of being micromanaged,
Yeah.
what are the actual ripple effects on household budgets, on the psychological well-being of the women managing everything?
Yeah, there's definitely a clear structural impact. Remember, these women are often managing SNF funds for a whole household, maybe several kids.
Right, stretching every dollar.
Exactly. So when certain items they used to buy with SNFP are suddenly off limits, what happens? They might feel pressured to use their very limited cash, their non-SNFP money, to buy those items anyway, maybe for a kid's birthday, like we said.
So it squeezes their cash budget even more.
Precisely. It just tightens already strained budgets, adds another layer of financial stress, forces harder trade-offs they didn't have to make before.
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah, there's that distinct psychological burden we touched on. It reinforces that feeling of judgment, of being controlled.
Constantly reminded.
Yeah. Being singled out by a policy specifically because you're the one buying the food,
Yeah.
it can feel very personal. It adds to the mental load, contributes to feeling maybe disrespected or marginalized.
So, okay, if the ban is seen as problematic, as intrusive, especially by the people it's supposed to help or regulate, what are the alternatives? What are critics suggesting could actually promote public health through SNAP instead of just banning things?
Well, the main thrust from critics is pretty consistent. They argue that a more effective health policy wouldn't focus on bans. Instead, it would focus on making the healthy stuff, fruits, vegetables, cheaper and easier to get.
Increase access and affordability for the good stuff?
Exactly. Incentivize the positive rather than restrict the negative.
Yeah.
They believe a more constructive approach involves tackling those root causes we talked about, addressing poverty directly, working proactively to eliminate food deserts, making sure people can actually buy fresh food near where they live.
So, empower people rather than restrict them.
That's the core argument. Make it easier and more affordable to make healthy choices, instead of just taking away some of their current, perhaps limited options.
This deep dive really brings it home, doesn't it? How policy isn't just words on paper. It lands right in people's kitchens, their pantries, those grocery store aisles. And the pushback, especially from women who are usually managing those groceries, it's just such a vivid reminder of the real human consequences.
It really is. And it shows that when people feel unheard, or worse, feel like they're being micromanaged in very personal choices, well, the debate escalates quickly. It becomes about more than just the policy details. It digs into those fundamental questions of control, respect, and that essential trust between people and their government.
So maybe something to think about for you, our listener. What really stands out to you here about how these policy decisions, even ones that might start with good intentions, can stir up such deep feelings? Feelings about dignity, about independence, particularly for people managing essential household needs day in and day out, worth mulling over perhaps next time you encounter a policy debate. Where's that balance between broad societal goals and individual autonomy?